So, Season 1 we started with a bad comic. Season 2 we started with a meh comic. Season 3 we started with what I thought was a good comic. In Season 4 we started out with some god-awful trash. So, I hear you ask, what are we starting this season out with?
With a comic so bad it can pretty much only go up from here.
Well, it's not dilly-dally, cause I'm coming into this season filled with piss and vinegar that I can feel is gonna get drained faster than you can say.
Is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
Today's comic is called WarMage and is written by Eric Dumoc Flores, who you might also remember for such blockbuster hits as A Call to Destiny, Monster Lover, and Shadow Root. No, I've never heard of them either, but I can reassure you that once we've covered this comic, we've also covered all of those as well, cause it's all the exact same laughable formula for each and every one of these comics. There's also a reason why you haven't heard of these comics, because once you check out the WarMage link site, sweet fucking Christ my eyes, you will find that Eric promotes himself on such fresh and topical sites such as MySpace, where the site is gone, on Yahoo Groups, where the site is gone, on Comic Space, where the site is gone, and his live journal, which seems to be him role-playing as one of his characters and was last updated in 2007. You can also go to his Twitter, but all of his tweets are protected. So the only way you got to really follow this guy is to go to his Tumblr, which you actually have to look for, and his DeviantArt. And you know what? It's not gonna be a secret that we are gonna tear this comic to shreds. So let me just say this, if you need something wholesome, you should go check out his Tumblr. Guys sharing videos and pictures and it's just super cozy stuff. Plus you gotta respect the guy who's on the grind and hitting the gym like he is.
In all honesty, when I found out that Eric had remade this comic on the WarMage Rebirth, I honestly scoured the internet to try and find any of these pages, but little to no luck. I did find his WordPress account that apparently had those images, but the images just wouldn't load, so guess we're stuck with this then.
So, being stuck with the original WarMage, here's some background information. The comic started in January 2007 and seems to have been all but abandoned in June 2009, perhaps to pursue the updated Rebirth version. Actually, if you go to the site, you'll find it similar to an old abandoned house that's just been left for Father Time to take a sledgehammer to. The site is in terrible disrepair, with links not found anymore, a live comment chat that hasn't had a single real response since 2010 and has since then been spammed by bots. The cast page doesn't work anymore, the webcomic list button takes you to the webcomic list's homepage, and not even the donation button works anymore. Trust me, I tried. It's a wonder the page button even works, but even then, the page buttons are so poorly coded that they are bleeding together into the same words. I honestly can't tell if this is due to time or just poor web design.
So, with a comic that time seems to have forgotten, why are we reviewing it today? Well, let's dive in and find out.
You know what they say about first impressions being important? Yeah, that counts for comics too, and boy howdy, this is not a good start. The starting image is gigantic, and looking at it you can see some bad scaling artifacting, showing this was made much smaller and scaled way the fuck up afterwards. And it's extra weird cause it's another one of those comics that just has random words start with capital letters. Anyway, we meet this guy who's on his way to become a witch. Not a warlock, which is also mentioned on several occasions in this comic. No, a witch. You know, like Sabrina, and Hermione Granger, and Rita Repulsa, and the Enchantress, and my ex-girlfriend.
In case you haven't caught on already, these are all characters with one vital thing in common. They're all characters that I either have or wanna stick my dick. They are all women.
Anyway, this is our main protagonist, Livlin.
fuck this.
Here's Jim, okay? Fuck it, we're going with that. Jim wants to be turned into a witch again, in case the t-shirt with a fucking pentacle on it wasn't fucking obvious. There's apparently this shop full of witches or whatever, and Jim's the first man to be initiated as a witch. I fucking wonder why. Also, am I the only one who's getting some really bad Elseron Chronicle vibes from this? Anyway, Jim was apparently more or less taken in by his coven when his super Christian mother kicked him out after finding out that Jim practiced magic. Trust me, this will shit its bed super hard later when we get a prologue. Anyway, the ritual starts and we...
This is a porn comic, isn't it?
And from the fucking get-go, it's creepy. Cause for the ritual to take place, the one doing the ritual, Bridget, has to kiss various points on the person, which includes Jim's enormous huge horse-sized cock. And while the other body part seems to get the same kind of loving peck you'd give to your grandma, the kiss on the cock is like full on grab that shit by the shaft and kiss it like you missed it. And it's even worse considering that Jim's just before this mentioned how Bridget in many ways is like a mother to him.
Creeped out yet? No? Don't worry, we'll get there.
Once the ritual is over, Jim decides on his new name and says that from this moment forward he shall be known as WarMage. Not only does he still get called Jim in the future way more than WarMage, Dad or Daddy, don't ask, but I kind of feel this very much is like the reason why people are now allowed to change their PSN account name. Cause they ended up with embarrassing shit like this. Like fucking really? It's a wonder it's just this and not XX WarMage 420 kill XX or some shit. Anyway, much like all terrible webcomics, WarMage seems to be in a rush to get any and all setup out of the way as fast as possible. So the ritual has hardly ended before this Indian lady enters the room, who's apparently someone Jim knew when he was very young. Kriti Samudasi here is apparently here to be Jim's wife.
Or, well, I say wife, but honestly, it's something much deeper than that. Something more romantic. The word I'm thinking of is something along the lines of... sex slave. Yeah, that's the word, yeah.
I am dead stone cold Steve Austin serious. They might put a different spin on it to make it sound more cute, but when all is said and done, Kriti was made to be the perfect fuck. She comes to Jim to help him by fucking him. She's perfectly fine with Jim having a girlfriend as long as she still fucks her. She several times says she'll be ready day and night to fuck Jim. No deed or position is too much for her, cause she only is there to fuck Jim. Every goddamn word attached to Kriti is how she's all about fucking Jim. So much so that during a particular confrontation she announces herself as the girl who Jim fucks. She also seems to have a 6-inch taint for some reason. Anyway, Kriti is here cause who cares, and is giving Jim a dowry? Which is a thing in Indian culture, I think, where a bride hands her husband a piece of property or money on their marriage. The dowry in this case is Jim's super suit, the armor of Rama. Yes, you heard that right. Super suit. This comic, ladies and gentlemen, is an erotic superhero comic in which the main protagonist is a witch in an ancient armor by the Indian hero Rama, who's flying around fighting crime while he at home has not one, not two, but 3 different girlfriends.
Do you need me to take it a little slower? Cause this is a lot of dumb to take in all at once.
So let's just, unwrap this enigma one layer at a time, cause I'm pretty sure if you try and process all of this at once, you're gonna end up with a brain aneurysm. Let us first of all tackle the sex, cause I know some of you people out there are some regular old horn dogs. I mean, most of you are furries for Christ's sake. So remember how it was super uncomfortable that Jim had this huge enormous dick kissed by his mother figure? Well, if that made you uncomfortable, you are not ready for the rest this comic has to offer you. Such as him straight up fucking this mother figure who then uses his cum as some sort of face paint on her and Kritty. At one point, Jim is fucking Kritty and this other girl Suki, and Jim's real mother listens in and is super turned on by it, starts flicking the bean to it, and then shortly after gets her own son's cum all over her face and in her mouth, and isn't super against it. And if that wasn't bad enough, this comic will, for whatever fucking reason, at 2 points completely derail the entire fucking comic to lecture the reader about how to do anal sex and what cock worship is.
Don't believe me?
Welcome to another episode of Sex Talk with Comics. No, we couldn't figure out a different name. And today we get this big package of text from WarMage. Let's read this juicy bit. Okay, there's a difference between just getting a blowjob and just outright cock worship. It's a matter of technique. Blowjobs are often considered chores, something you don't want to do, and for the most part, women don't enjoy them. Now, cock worship is more than that. You are devoting time and attention to something you love. It's a performance, but also a form of worship. It's not just you sticking it in your mouth and sucking it, touching, kissing and stroking. You are letting the man know that his cock is the center of love. Your cock then becomes her all-consuming need. Yes, we've changed narrative standpoint now. More than just a tool, it becomes her life, her food, her total being. She begs you to come. She becomes enamored with your cock. You can't refuse her when she asks. No guy is that heartless. When you do come, she takes every drop. It is her prize, and in the end, she gets off of her worship as much as you do. Hence the difference. Citation by this one guy the author knew who claimed to have had sex but really picked up all of this from one of the videos he found on Brazzers.
There is no God.
Also having, done the sex thing before, plus having boy and lady friends who are bordering on nymphomaniac sex freak, a blowjob isn't necessarily only for the man's pleasure. Whoever is doing the blowing can get off on the control they have over the...
I just realized what I'm doing and we're quickly moving on here.
This all just screams that this is written by a guy who hasn't actually had sex and based the majority, if not all of his knowledge about sex off of pornos or hentais. Like, you can't see it, but his dick is the size of a goddamn arm. Dude would pass out due to anemia if he got a fucking erection. Anyway, that's a subject better fit for the art section. But yeah, you can bet your whole ass that if Jim isn't out saving the world as a superhero, he's getting into sexual antics that seem so forced and convenient it'd make a porn movie blush. Plus, the way that the girls and him interact when the girls dare to question Jim and how he has several partners is some fucking cringy sociopathic nightmare material. Like when Jim's first girlfriend, Suki, asked Jim if he likes to be with her better than anyone else and if he thinks she's special, Jim's response is, "This isn't a contest, Suki. You are special. I think all women are special." Like, fucking way to dodge the question there, dude. And that's not all. This comic feels so fucking skeezy with so much different shit. Like how Jim forces Kitri and Suki to fuck for his pleasure. How he makes Kitri fuck her own sister, how Jim talks about treating women, and how to keep your pimp hand strong.
This is episode 1 of the season and I already want to kill myself.
Moving quickly along, let's talk about the hero part. This part is also dumb, but not as bad as the sex stuff. It's still equally as forced, contrived and childish, but not as bad. It's clear that Eric, when he wrote this, had that thing where he felt Christianity was super stupid, and he was so far superior to it because he didn't believe in it, so the main antagonistic force is some super devout Christian guy. But that's somehow not the weirdest thing, not even the most insulting thing either.
How come whenever I'm talking about this comic, it always feels like it's gonna get worse just around the corner?
I'm not even gonna dance around it. At one point we get a background story of Jim, and I'm just gonna quickly gloss over how Jim found a magic book and how he was super close to his dad, and instead just talk about how his dad died. Because in this world where there's mages, witches, super Christians, warlocks, cyborgs, and what have you, how did Jim's dad die? What is the fantasy element that killed off Jim's dad? Why, it's 9/11, of course.
Oh, fuck!
Why? Of everything you could put in, real or otherwise, why did it have to be 9/11? You could make up a tragedy. You're clearly dealing with an unreal world with paranormal elements. You can rewrite fucking history. So why the fuck did it have to be 9/11?
Does this mean Mini Mandy killed Jim's dad?
I mentioned it briefly before, but for some odd reason they keep talking about metas in this comic as a sort of meta-human thing. In this universe, superheroes are just a normal thing, it seems, which isn't actually a bad thing. It's actually something I find pretty interesting, considering this predates stuff like One Punch Man and My Hero Academia by several years. But it's never really explained how or why or to what extent, which makes it hilarious when, say, Sugi flips her shit and say, "I'm not a whore, I'm a cyber-enhanced cyborg," or some shit like that, just out of the blue. These superheroes don't get a whole lot of play, however, and are more or less only used as props in the world. But it's an interesting thing, I'd say, that make the universe of WarMage pretty interesting and rather unique.
Don't worry, we'll get right back to shitting on this comic.
I only have two things that needs to be addressed before we can move on. One is about the union of villains that attacks WarMage and his insane whore posse. Because during one attack they mention how Jim hasn't grown aware of his webcomic presence yet. At first you just think it's a joke, cause there's a weird increase in humor all of a sudden for no explainable reason. But it actually turns out to be a vital plot point later. Yes, Jim actually becomes aware and acknowledges he is a webcomic character at one point, and even uses this fact to escape a predicament because the writer would obviously write it so he could escape. And just when you think this is too stupid to be real, look who fucking shows up. Remember this guy? It's the smiling guy from the fucking Lightbringer comic. Cause apparently this guy is some villain who just shows up in various comics here and there. Unfortunately, the comic just got dropped before we could see where this all went.
Yep, you heard that right. Unfortunately.
As brain dead insane and downright offensive this comic is, I gotta admit I enjoyed reading it. Partially because you just wanna see what the next dumb thing is. It's a train wreck in slow motion, but at the same time there's this weird thing that are kinda interesting and weirdly well researched. The comic is constantly moving, and even though I found the sex repulsive with how it was depicted and all that, it kinda manages to break things up so you both get the goofy action and the even goofier sex, and you are never wondering what's what. For a mess of a comic like this, it is oddly well paced and structured, and it actually manages to foreshadowing stuff before cashing it out pretty well in advance. In short, the writing of WarMage is like a Neil Breen movie, so bad that you cannot look away from it.
You killed him.
Dad! No! Allie! Dad! Don't go in there! Dad! Don't look! Dad! Dad! You didn't see anything! Dad! You know how he was! Dad! Go call.
Also, both seem to be written by people who might not actually be human.
The last thing I want to talk about is that you guys have obviously noticed how this comic is immature and not exactly handled well with any care whatsoever.
Oh! Fuck!
So, as is true to form with these comics that don't handle shit well, of course it decides that it's a good idea to cover the subject of rape. Of course it happens to women in the comic too, but the one rape scene that gets taken serious and isn't just a thing that villains does, actually happens to someone raping Jim. Now, credit where it's due. Eric actually does put more into this than most people does. Jim is, after the whole thing, kinda scarred, scared, and uncomfortable having sex, being close to girls, which is an interesting position to be in considering he's basically living in an all-you-can-eat sex buffet. So you really get to see how this affects him, which is more than I can say about the rape in most other comics I've covered. It's just a shame that while it's happening, Jim is so blasé and nonchalant about it. Heck, he's not even showing any real discomfort, and when we hear his thoughts, he's calmly hatching a plan on how to escape, and even cracking jokes.
The fact that a guy who has a comic where there's mages, superheroes, and just gigantic incestuous orgies thinks that he is mature enough to tackle 9/11 and rape is a mystery to me.
Let's just get the positives out of the way. A, Lord knows it'll be easy and quick to talk about, and B, is actually something I really appreciate. Now, being a Buddhist,
Just gonna let you guys take that in for a minute, because for whatever reason it seems to be a burning question that some of you guys have.
Anyway, being a Buddhist and having studied martial arts and ki and whatever, cause I was a weird kid, something immediately hit me that was the armor of Rama that Jim wears, is, without mentioning, having stones at all the different chakra points, as they are supposed to be on a person, complete with the one that hovers in midair with his dumb hat and dick cloth. It's honestly pretty clever and a design choice that's oddly fitting for the suit's origins. That, and you probably won't be able to tell, the way Eric draws the characters have sex, you can often really tell there's a heavy movement behind the fucking.
And that's about all the compliments that I got for this. Yeah.
Before I continue, no, this isn't the worst art ever, not by a long shot. It's just ugly and unappealing. Meaning that there's some understanding and basic knowledge of conveyance there, but that's about it. Now, when I say it's ugly and unappealing, I don't just mean it's drawn bad. Well, there's that too. But it sometimes feels like Rick actively took steps to make things not look good. Like when you see these pictures, you'll get these weird black pixels here and there, almost as if it's dust in the wind. It's the same kind of shit you'd get by scanning a piece of paper that still has eraser traces or particles of pencils that's been picked up as well. But if this is all digitally drawn, why have those in there? It clogs up the image and just looks poor and unprofessional.
Like, why did you do extra work to implement mistakes?
Being an action comic, Eric actually does manage to convey some sense of kinetic movement when the different characters fight. And then other times he completely botches it to a laughable extreme. I kinda feel it does the comic good that so much of the fighting happens with spells and magic, cause then the different characters don't have to connect with one another. Cause when that happens, it's just looking really odd and stiff. It's kind of weird that when the sex can have the sense of furious movement, the punches just look slow and pathetic. Like, either when they're fighting, they're basically just doing that weird slap fighting kids do, or when Jim is having sex, he's absolutely abolishing that puss.
Volcor 316 says, you must crush puss.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the girls. Quick behind the scenes thing, a good measuring stick I've found to determining someone's artistic skills is typically how they draw the opposite gender. Like when Eric here draws women, it's clear where his interests lie. There's the ass, there's the tits, and I guess a head on top just for good measure. There, boom, I made a female.
And I understand the ladies.
Like, how many ribs do you think you can fit in there, bro? Like 5 at best? All the ladies in WarMage are some guy's sexual fetishized depiction of women. All the girls are stacked to a ludicrous extreme, have fat asses, and those weird, uncomfortably long porn actress nails. Like, I can see it because Suki is apparently a cyborg who uses her claws as weapons, but why does Kitri have those? And why does Jim's mother have them? I also get why Kitri's demonic sister has them, but is it really a good idea to finger yourself with those? Aren't you gonna end up with internal bleeding if you go too nuts? Also, again, with the girls, weird things are put in to make things more ugly than they have to be. Like, why are some of the girls' tongue blue and purple? Why did you give Kitri such a weird long nose?
What is wrong with your face?
Why did you go to painstaking lengths to add weird bumps and shit to their auroras? Like, I guess it's correct, but it's not exactly like this comic is one of those depictions of reality here. I mean, for fuck's sake, Jim's gigantic dick just looks like a massive sausage. There was given about half the detail to this than the breasts.
How much you wanna bet that Eric was like, what? I'm not gonna focus on getting the dick, right? What am I, fucking gay?
Anatomy is not a word that Eric concerns himself with, nor is consistency. Everyone changes in size and build and changes their anatomy to suit the mood. You best believe that the girl's breast especially changes constantly in size like it's some weird inflation fetish. Even Jim's dick changes in size, and not in the typical way when you have an erection. No, I'm talking about going from being about a foot long to be the same size of a small person at times. Speaking of Jim, when he fights he will also constantly change size compared to his opponent, but also the environment he's in. Like this shot here where he's smaller than a goddamn mailbox. The designs of the different characters are just a hot mess. All girls are basically porn actresses. Jim is always super buff and hardly ever depicted in any negative way, and all the villains are either covered in some weird suit or whatever, only one of which being cool, and I think Eric realized that because he ended up giving that same costume to Jim, or they're guy. Like just guy. I guess Mike or whatever his name is kinda different due to his crimson red hair, but that's about it. And the same thing goes for everyone who is not part of the main cast. Everyone looks the same, only difference being their hair color and length, or maybe size. It's so bad you often get confused as to who is who.
Like, at one point I was honestly pondering why Jim's mother was named Lakeisha and was talking like a sassy black woman.
The art is, much like the writing of this comic, childish and immature. It feels like it's written and drawn by a guy who just hit puberty, and is thus all about superheroes and sex. It's that weird age where it cannot be too much. The breasts can't be too big, the dicks cannot be too big, the amount of semen can't be too much, the taboo of sex cannot be too much, and every girl has to look like a porn star as a result. But honestly, this comic feels like the opposite problem of what most other comics I've covered. Where most comics I've covered could draw well but not necessarily know how to do it in a comic setting, WarMage seems to know how to draw for a comic, but not know how to draw well. This honestly makes me curious to see how well Eric's art has progressed. I mean, this comic is from 2009. Can you imagine how much his art has improved over the course of almost 10 years? Let's check his DeviantArt out, and that's... okay.
Let's move on. Okay.
You may be wondering why I, in my cutaway sections, can be in a sense of disbelief and shock, and that's... well, typically it's for comedic effect, but other times like this, it's because I, between reading the comic and writing the script, actually forget how bad some of these things are. There's almost an art to make stuff this bad. I don't even think people could do it if they tried. It's like tripping down a flight of stairs, you can't do it willingly. I think that pretty much all there is to say about them has already been said. The girls are there to long for Jim, and Jim is the best guy in the world. There, done. This is what your Patreon money gets you, folks.
No, I'm not spoony.
So let's talk about Jim. Jim is... actually, hold on. You know how I mentioned that Eric had other comics in his catalog too, and not just this? Well, let me try and flex my season reviewing muscles, and see if I can't cover all of these comics' male protagonists with one fell swoop. Here goes. The main protagonist of these comics is a guy with a certain bravado who handles himself like he knows more than everyone else, and talks to people less knowing than him in the very same way you'd find the protagonist of Suicide for Hire talk to people. The best attribute is to stand and look menacing or badass and has little to no faults of their own, despite the writer's best intentions of making them so. They all walk around sporting a cock at the size of an arm and are never particularly eager to get some action, because it's either readily available at all times in which the protagonist takes a dominant role, but sometimes he also just has the sex with a female character or more, because it's to be expected as some sort of payment for him for doing a good thing for the female character. Seriously though, this is actually pretty laughable and kinda sad. Every male protagonist of these comics are the exact same, down to the only thing separating them are what kind of superpowers they have. Are they a vampire? Are they a mage? Are they a Pokemon trainer or some shit? I don't know. Jim, probably because the comic went on for longer, does however seem to be a little more fleshed out. A little being the key word here. There is some personality to him, and for what it's worth, it kinda stays consistent throughout the comic. He is kind of a thinker, a character that assesses things rather than rushing headfirst into it. He seems like kind of an alpha male and has a better than you attitude, which I honestly think Eric did intentional. Honestly, Jim is a pretty interesting character to give a superpower, cause the way he acts out of costume sometimes makes it seem like he can go either way, as either a superhero or a supervillain. This, however, I don't think is super intentional.
I find it hard to explain why exactly, but I don't actually hate Jim as a written character. Like, I hate him as a person if he was real, because he's conflicting with a lot of ideals and stuff that I have, but as a written character, he's honestly not that bad.
Like, yes, his treatment of women is bad. Yes, he's an asshole. Yes, he's arrogant. Yes, he's bland and boring. But at the same time, I kind of feel that, I don't know, once I'm 20 episodes into this season, I think I'll still remember Jim, which is more than I can say for this guy. I swear I've even forgotten his dumb goddamn name, and I know it's like named after a star, and I made almost an hour-long video about this comic. I am under no illusion that this is intentional, and I think that 99% of the reason why I find Jim interesting is in the same way I find Christian interesting. Because they are both such a clusterfuck to follow that I cannot help but to stare and take notes.
And by the way, you guys can stop linking me the video of Christine masturbating while singing All Star. I just realized how weird this sentence sounds if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Moving quickly along, we got Kriti Samudasi. And can I just say how refreshing it honestly is to see an Indian girl in a comic for once? Like, in today's anime society, the only characters from the East you will ever find in fiction are either Japanese or a horrible stereotype in some kind of 7-Eleven. As stated earlier, every girl in this comic is there for Jim to stick his dick inside. Even the villains. Even Jim's mother to a certain extent. And the girls who aren't in Jim's immediate circle of friends, well, their function is also centered around sex. Girls on the streets are there to be raped, and if they're not, they're probably a lesbian, which suddenly starts popping up everywhere in the comic. And the entirety of their dialogue is how they wanna eat their partner out. I'm just stating this so I don't have to, with every female character, go, this character is just there for sex. So looking at Kriti without talking about how she's only there for sex, we got... Okay, so maybe I'll do an exception this time. Kriti is apparently some sort of homunculus created by her quote-unquote dad, so she could be the perfect match for Jim. This reveal, however, is kinda treated with about as much care as, well, one of the random girls getting raped in the comic. And it's kinda extra weird cause Jim met Kriti when they were about 7 years old, meaning that Kriti's dad must have made Kriti before Jim was even old enough to know what a penis was.
Does that freak anyone else out, or am I alone on this one?
Kriti is legit only made for sex. There is nothing else there. Every word, every action by her is only serving as an extension to Jim and his dick. You could replace any and all images of her with a fleshlight, and I don't really think a lot of people would be confused. It's so bad that she doesn't really seem to have a mind of her own. Everything she does either has to go through Jim or is something Jim orders her to do. She doesn't even show any hint of apprehension when Jim having several other girlfriends, that Jim fucks Critty's sister, that Jim wants to fuck her in the ass, or that Jim suddenly wants to make her a superhero, because apparently she's also a good fighter.
Kitty is what happens when you make a hormonal teenage boy create a character. All sexual flair and no depth.
Next is Tsuki, and yes, you might be perking your eyebrow a little here, cause what the heck is a girl suddenly doing with big black raven wings? And I'll tell you, I got no idea. Sometimes she has the wings, other times she doesn't, and at first I gotta admit I didn't even notice them, cause their black color bled together with her black top and black hair, so it just really looked like a smudge with a face on it. It gets extra weird when out of left field she will say, and I'm quoting her directly here, "Do I look like a demon, you dumbass? Stupid jerk! I am a genetically enhanced cyborg, you moron!" What? Mind you, this is before any real ground rules have been established for how there are several paranormal entities in this comics universe. So you're just supposed to go, oh yeah, of course she's a genetically enhanced cyborg, of course. And it is never ever brought up again. They don't explain anything, they don't hint at anything, heck we don't even know why she has wings every now and then. You're just supposed to go with it and don't ask questions and be distracted by the boobs on screen. To Tsuki's credit though, I will say that she actually does have some personality, meaning she's rude, loud, foul-mouthed, and this actually continues all the way through the comic. So Tsuki is actually a character. There's traits here. I cannot believe how low my standards of complimenting a character have become over the years, but here we are. Also, because you know we gotta address it, her relation to Jim, cause of course she has to have one, is that she's Jim's sex trainee? Pet? Like, I used slave for Critty, so I think I'm gonna have to go with pet for Tsuki, cause Jim has to train Tsuki with sex, complete with spankings when she's not obeying. Dad and Tsuki constantly, even when they're both in their secret identity superhero suits, calls Jim Daddy. I could talk more about the other characters, but really I think I've already done that. It's really just your flavor of the week cast for sexual preferences. Do you want the mature mother? Do you want the buff strong girl who looks like a troll?
Oh, hello there! Whatever floats your boat.
Do you want the girl who's just 100% identifying by the fact that she's black, so much so that at one point she calls Jim, and again I quote, the only white boy I would consider sleeping with? Honestly, that's the level of secondary characters we're dealing with here. All the secondary characters are women who in some shape or form wants to fuck Jim, or be there as a character that Jim could potentially fuck if he ever had the courtesy of gracing them with his cock. The villains aren't much better. There's never really any motivation behind them other than being your typical Saturday morning cartoon villains, which I honestly gotta admit I sometimes found rather endearing. You know, right until the only lady supervillain decides to fuck Jim, cause then we were right back to ground zero. I will also say I did kinda like the whole idea behind the Inquisitor, and I honestly hoped he would bring a religious edge to the comic as a way for various religions to duke it out, considering the comic put so much emphasis on it to begin with. But of course we didn't get that, and instead he's just a psychotic murdering lunatic with powers he believes he got from God. He also manages to come back after a certain point despite his head being cut off, and it's never really addressed.
It might have been answered if the comic wasn't stopped, but we were over 200 pages in after Tsuki's comment about being a genetically enhanced cyborg. And we didn't even get any explanations about that either, so...
The writing is a 4. The comic is all over the place. It's stupid, it's childish, but I honestly gotta say you can feel Eric have actually done some thinking at certain points. It's bad, but at the same time, it's not terrible. The art is a 4 as well. Much like the writing, the art is all over the place and is all around pretty terrible, but you are at no point questioning what's going on, and as we've seen from Lightbringer, when it comes to action in superhero comics, you could do so much worse. The characters are a 2. Honestly, the only saving grace for these characters is the fact that their personality stays consistent. You just really have to dig to find that character. The final verdict of WarMage is a 4. It's offensive, it's stupid, it's childish when it's supposed to be mature, and I would be lying if I said I didn't have a blast reading it, just because it was hilarious watching the comic just constantly upping itself unintentionally with how bad it was. If you're looking for quality, look elsewhere, but if you want to read something so bad it's good, I would honestly suggest you give WarMage a look.
I don't even really know what words I can attach to this comic. It's bad, it's real bad. But it's that really goofy bad that's really fun to just sit down with your friends with and just have a read. Off to a rocking good start with season 5 then, huh? I'll see you guys at the next webcomic relief. Take care.
Check me out. Check me out. Just check me. Let me show you what it's all about. Check it out. I'm gonna light it up. Yeah, I'm gonna light it up. Check it out. I'm gonna light it up. Yeah, I'm gonna light it up. Just check it out. I'm gonna light it up. Yeah, I'm gonna light it up. Let me show you what it's all about. Check it out. I'm gonna light it up. Yeah, I'm gonna light it up. Check it out. I'm gonna light it up. Yeah, I'm gonna light it up. Just check it out. I'm gonna light it up. Yeah, I'm gonna light it up. Let me show you what it's all about. Check it out.
We're back! Hi! Welcome, I didn't see you there. Welcome to season 5. I hope you enjoyed the video. I don't know, I just tripped over my dick and found this one, and it was just an enigma, and I just had to cover this as the first comic of this season. First of all, like, if this is your first time seeing a video, hi, my name is Lasse. I go under the role of Riser. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we've gotten a lot of new viewers coming from the Nightmind channel. Welcome, one and all. I'm happy to have you guys here. Huge shout out to Nick for making that really awesome video where he just showcased me as one of his favorite YouTubers. That was truly humbling, and I was blushing like the whole fucking day. That was really insane. So really, thanks for that. This season is just gonna be normal reviews. I know that a lot of you like the storylines that I did in season 4, 3, and 2, partially in 1, and I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna do that in this season. In the last season, those were typically the hardest things to write, to make everything fit in with the narrative. And season 4 was all about pointing the gun outwards, about how we see others, and then season 4 and season 3 was all about, you know, how we see ourselves, pointing it inward. So I have nowhere left to point the gun, so I have nothing left to tell for now. Maybe it'll show up in season 6, but in this season there's not gonna be any real gimmicks or anything, but I do wanna try and make this the best season yet, and I'm going to do that with you guys' help. So one of the ways that you can do this, I'm leading up to the best segue ever, is if you have any suggestions, by all means write them in the comments, send me a mail on riser@mail.com, or go to the Discord or add me on Twitter at Hellraiser. Basically, just reach out to me if you have an idea, if you think there's anything in the show I can improve. Please let me know. We did some new stuff in this episode with a new mic that I've gotten that is supposed to just be attached to my shirt, which means that I can now record audio wherever the fuck I am. But the audio sounds weird to me. I don't know if that's just me. By all means, let me know what you think. But one of the other ways that you can help with the show is by pledging to the Patreon. See? Yeah, and now we're gonna go into the patrons in a bit. But really, thank you so much for everyone who is pledging to the Patreon. I seriously can't thank you guys enough. I don't think I talk about it enough, but it's really only because of you guys that I am able to study and was able to move and start a completely new chapter in my life. Because of the income that I get from Patreon, and it's my livelihood. It's my alpha omega right now. So thank you guys so much. One of the new things that I'm trying to do, we did it with WarMage here, is that we're going to be making I'm probably going to stream me working on the comics some more in the future, so you can get some behind the scenes. The streams will be live for everyone, so hit that bell like all the popular YouTubers say, but the behind the scenes pledge on the Patreon, those people will get a unlisted video, so they can watch it if they were not there and get all the behind the scenes stuff. The videos will also serve as kind of a Q&A. You can just talk to me about whatever. So if that suits your fancy, you can go to the Patreon and see just how much you have to pledge to get that. I think it's a cool little thing, but again, if there's any suggestions you have, let me hear them. I've talked for long enough. Let's get into the patrons who sponsored this video. Nicholas Knudson. Nicholas wants me to push the YouTube channel called FishStickOnAStick. It's a channel that does roast reviews and readings of Creepypasta, so it's basically what you'd get if you mixed Nightmine with the webcomic relief. So check it out. Amosen. Amosen is working on a comic called Druids, which is a mature themed fantasy comic in the world of Warcraft. If you are interested in a more mature story from that world, and done by someone who actually knows how to write, check it out. Narffy. Narffy is working on a webcomic called Heretic. A rogue demon named Withar, under the training of the renowned monster slayer Helsing, sets out to protect the innocent against the forces of evil. Scarred by past experiences growing up in hell, she's determined to prove herself better than her kind. You can keep in touch with this comic on Narffy's Twitter. Check it out. Hitori the artist. Hitori needs money for his dad's medical bills. If there's any way you can help Hitori, he would greatly appreciate it. You can both donate, pledge to his Patreon, or commission him and get some sick art for it. I'm a Moron. I'm a Moron wants me to push his comic Doom Ones, which is a really meta chosen one story with a twist. Rajaru. Withar wants me to push his friend Siv Kisley, who is currently living in Japan but is raising money to move to America. They sell ensemble pins, stickers of their designs, and has or will open commissions for tattoos or just normal commissions. The link is in the description. The Bonsai. Bonsai is working on a fantastic comic that I've had the pleasure of sitting down with him and help with on the sidelines. Seeing how thoroughly this guy worked with this comic is an absolute treat, and I can't wait till you guys finally get to see it. Follow Bonsai on his social medias to keep track of when his comic drops. Shane Asher. Shane has moved pretty far in the Hardwood original character tournament that he's using as a preview for his webcomic SOS, Soldiers of Seraria. Please go check it out and cheer him on so our boy can go as far as possible. Nana Newcomb. Nana is working on the webcomic called Blackbird and Miss Murder. This is a different spin on the whole superhero comics, with two girls with psychic powers fighting crime and staying alive. If this sounds right up your alley, by all means, please go check it out. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Henry Volt, Lorayo Kun, Sebastian Vanborg, Kathy Catlin, Neo, Alex J, Jordan Burke, Stacy Pitt, Kawai Lee, Shiv, and Drika of Adrian. And also a super huge thank you to all the lovely people that you see here. If you want to support the show, change my life and make it so I can live off of YouTube and entertaining people, please go to my Patreon. Here you can donate anything you want every month and you will get a ton of awesome rewards for it. Just go to www.patreon.com/riser2eyes. There will be a link in the description. You can also go to TeePublic and get your hands on some of the new Webcomic Relief merch. There's also a link for that in the description. And if you don't want to support the show financially, at least think about liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or sharing your favorite Webcomic Relief episode with your friends. I'll see you guys at the next Webcomic Relief. Take care.